Top stories tonight in Y News. The mandatory wearing of face mask and COVID-19 testing in the Philippines will continue even as the government prepares to transition into a new normal.
The government records low vaccination turnout in the provinces during the third national vaccination drive.
Petitioners behind the junk disqualification cases against presidential candidate Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos are set to take the matter before the Commission on Elections on Bank.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson warns the Ukraine crisis has grown into the most dangerous moment for Europe in decades.
Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Friday, February 11, 2022. Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the Philippines and in other parts of the world. I am William Theo.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I'm Angelo Castro III.
First in the news, the mandatory wearing of face masks will still be required as the Philippines prepares its transition to the new normal. Isko Miguel explains why.
Health spokesperson Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere explained that the alert level 1 would be the new normal. Although COVID-19 cases in the country have a steady decline and daily average cases are at 6,103, the country's risk classification should be low to be placed at a more relaxed alert level 1.
Naghahanda tayo para dito sa sinasabi nating new normal. Atin pong tandaan, ang sabi natin ng alert level 1 po, ito po yung new normal natin dito po sa ating bansa. But what would be retained would be our self-regulation. We still follow the minimum public health standards, we still do masking, we still do ugas, iwas sa matataong lugar, physical distancing, and most importantly, of course, ventilation, airflow. No?
Undersecretary Vergere explained that under the new normal restrictions, indoor and outdoor capacity limit in establishments and in transportation will be removed. The DOH also said they cannot yet declare that the COVID-19 pandemic has become an endemic in the country due to different factors. Endemic also means the public has accepted that COVID-19 will always be around and has become part of the people's daily lives. But health experts emphasize that safety and health protocols against COVID-19 will stay in the new normal transition. Unlike other rich countries, the mandatory wearing of face masks would be last to go in the Philippines.
So I think safeguards should still be there. Kung magkakaroon man tayo ng pagtransisyon and easing of restrictions, I think the mask mandate will be the last to go because it will protect each and every one of us kung sakasakali, and also not just for COVID-19 but for the other respiratory infections also. It has protected us.
Gradual. Siguro sa outdoors mawawala siya before sa indoors, and then once indoors siguro pati yung mga vulnerable population will probably hang on to their masks a little longer.
Hindi pa naman yan bumababa talaga ng tuluyan or ng husto. And unfortunately, nakikita rin natin sa ibang mga bansa ngayon na tumataas ang mga kaso like in South Korea, for example, no? Medyo sila nga, modelo natin yan, mulat sa pool. Kitang parang iniisip natin, nako, sana meron din tayo ng resources nila, and yet pati sila na-overwhelm ngayon. So ayaw naman nating maging matulad sa kanila kung sakasakali.
The World Health Organization said that though the worst is over in the Philippines, the public should still be cautious as COVID-19 variants like Omicron still exist. Isko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the Department of Health will be asked to determine the low turnout of vaccination in regions during the first day of the Bayanihan Bakunahan 3. JP Nunez has the story.
The third leg of the massive COVID-19 vaccination drive of the government will be extended until February 18. The third Bayanihan Bakunahan push was initially scheduled on February 10 and 11. Based on the data of the Department of Health, there are about 28 million Filipinos who are fully vaccinated and eligible to get their booster dose. However, only 219,000 of them received their COVID-19 booster vaccine and 440,000 were inoculated with their primary series. There are only 662,000 total jabs administered on the first day of the third national vaccination days, which is far from the initial target of 5 million total jab administered. The Department of Health will figure out why there was a low vaccination turnout, especially in other provinces.
Bakit natin pinalawig yung ating NBD3 hanggang February 18 para bigyan natin ng mas maraming panahon yung ating mga publiko, yung ating mga mamamayan para mag-avail ng kanilang first dose, yung second dose at saka yung kanilang booster para kumpleto ang ating proteksyon. Ano yung mga gagawin natin na aaralin natin kung ano yung mga dahilan at yung ibang areas ay mababa ang turnout.
In Metro Manila, 99% of the target population are already fully vaccinated against COVID-19. However, it did not reach the 30% rate for booster vaccination.
Yung ating booster, yun yung kailangan pa nating pataasin. Kasi nga, mga 26.89% pa lang. So, kailangan yun ang i-ramp up natin na mabakunan kasi added protection din ito yung booster, hindi lang yung first 2 doses dahil nga nagkakaroon ng mga variants.
To encourage more people to get vaccinated, the government plans to open more vaccination sites on establishments. Among them are pharmacy, clinics, and fast food restaurants. JP Nunez, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The National Vaccination Operations Center has urged local government units to provide more accessible vaccination hubs for senior citizens. Rosalie Cos reports why.
Almost 1 year has passed after the Philippine government launched the National Vaccination Campaign. According to the National Vaccination Operations Center, the percentage of senior citizens in the country who had already received their first dose of COVID-19 vaccine is at 70%. There are about 8.5 million master-listed senior citizens in the country.
We will take this opportunity to increase the vaccination of our senior citizens. Isa sila sa ating mga target na sana ay mas mapadali yung kanilang access sa pagbabakuna during this time. Kasi alam naman natin, nasa 70% first dose at saka 60% thereabouts ang second dose.
Senior citizens are second in the vaccination priority list of the government because they are vulnerable of severe disease, hospitalization, and death due to COVID-19. According to the World Health Organization, achieving high vaccination coverages among the elderly will contribute to protecting the hospitals from being overwhelmed and will help keep the economy open. Meanwhile, the National Vaccination Operations Center appealed to local government units to make their vaccination sites more accessible to senior citizens.
Pinapatignan din natin sa iba't ibang lugar kung baka hindi pumunta yung ating mga kailangan magbakuna sa mga health center. Tingnan nila, baka yung health center, yung mga bakuna center, ang ilapit doon sa mga mamamayan.
The government is now on its third round of massive nationwide vaccination campaign and the elderly remains to be the priority. Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Groups are seeking to reverse the decision of the Commission on Election First Division to dismiss the disqualification cases against presidential candidate Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. Dante Amento reports.
The campaign against the return of the Marcoses and Marcelo or Karma doubts the integrity of Comelec Commissioner Amy Ferolino over her ponencia or decision in the disqualification cases of presidential candidate Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Karma is one of the petitioners urging the Commission to bar Marcos from running in the 2022 automated national elections. Thus, they will file an appeal through a motion for reconsideration to the Comelec and Bank on Monday next week.
Para klaro lang po, Wala ho kaming paglilinlang, wala ho pa kaming pagkakamali. Ang nakakalungkot lang ay baka yung mga commissioner, iba na lang po yung kanilang pananaw.
The group stressed Marcos Jr. is not qualified to run as president due to his conviction for non-filing of income tax return.
Isa lang naman ang sagot doon. Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. is convicted. That is clear. That is a fact that they cannot even deny. And as a convicted individual, he is disqualified to run for the presidency or to serve in any public office, whether elective or appointed.
If the en banc will not favor their appeal, the last resort would be the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, the Comelec stands firm in the ruling of its first division to deny the consolidated disqualification cases. Comelec spokesperson Director James Jimenez says the resolution is based on facts such as the Court of Appeals ruling that Marcos Jr. was not perpetually disqualified to run for public office.
The basic decision is that there simply wasn't any ruling in the CA that said that kailangan ma-disqualify itong na pinapatawan ng perpetual disqualification yung kandidato. And that's really all that we have to go on, the existing CA ruling, right? The Comelec does not have the power to overturn or to modify that CA ruling.
Jimenez added, there is still no available jurisprudence or laws which penalize failure to file income tax return as a crime involving moral turpitude. This is also in the Supreme Court ruling over a case, Republic of the Philippines versus Ferdinand Marcos II and Imelda Marcos.
Again, number one, that there was no imprisonment for at least 18 months. There was also no conviction for a crime involving moral turpitude. Again, because the conviction for failure to file an IPR does not carry with it the characterization of having involved moral turpitude.
Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Presidential candidate Leody de Guzman says there will be more candidates that will change political parties as the election campaign continues. Eileen Cerudo will tell us why.
Presidential candidate Leody de Guzman says changing political parties happen in pursuit of more votes for the upcoming elections. This was amid the reports of the Lacson-Sotto tandem dropping re-electionist Sherwin Gatchalian and former Quezon City Mayor Herbert Bautista from their senatorial slate.
Wala naman silang magagawa dahil yun na yung gusto ng dalawa. Kahit naman hindi nila tanggalin, ay mawawala naman talaga sa kanila yon dahil yung dalawa ay naghahabol ng panalo.
De Guzman said candidates would prefer to be a part of stronger political parties. He also projects that there might be changes in the senatorial lineup of presidential candidates Lenny Robredo, apart from those who are really loyal to the party.
Meron, kasi yung slate ni Lenny, marami din naman trapo doon. Maraming trapo doon, pero alam ko yung mga progressive doon hindi babaklas. Yung mga progressive, katulad ni Chel Jokno, ni Laila, ni Teddy Balik, ni Riza Ontiveros, ni Bagilat, tingin ko hindi babaklas yun.
De Guzman said the Partido Lakas ng Masa remains confident that no one in his allies would leave, reiterating that their main focus is to help Filipino workers.
Na kaming grupo ay kabaligtaran ng mga kalaban namin. Dahil yung mga kalaban namin ay makakapitalista. Hindi kami sang-ayon sa sobrang pagkampe at pagsamba sa mga kapitalista. Kami nasa hari ng mga manggagawa.
Meanwhile, the team of presidential candidate Senator Panfilo Lacson and vice presidential candidate Senate President Tito Sotto III visit Panabo, Davao del Norte today. With their supporters, the Lacson-Sotto tandem laid out their plans for the country at Panobo Multipurpose Tourism Cultural and Sports Center, where around 2,000 supporters attended. One of their platforms include the Budget Reform Advocacy for Village Empowerment or BRAVE program, which aims to end corruption in the government. The group then went to Davao del Norte Sports Complex where supporters continue to send their greetings while carrying banners and posters. Eileen Sarudo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Presidential candidate and Vice President Leni Robredo promises an honest and excellent governance as they seek the support of another province in the most vote-rich region. Harleen Delgado will tell us why.
The Robredo-Pangilinan tandem went to Laguna today for the fourth day of their official campaign trail. The tandem started the Laguna leg of their campaign with a prayer in San Pablo Cathedral. As they addressed their supporters, presidential candidate and Vice President Leni Robredo promises an honest and zealous governance under her term should she win the presidency.
Ang akin pong commitment sa inyo, pag ako ang nabigyan ng pagkakataon para manilbihan pang lalo, ang aasahan niyong pamamahala ay isang matino, mahusay, matapat, masigasig, masipag na pamahalaan.
Meanwhile, Robredo believes there should be a new law automatically suspending fuel excise tax to address the continuous spike of oil prices. This as oil prices continue to increase for 6 consecutive weeks. However, Robredo emphasized that addressing the oil prices is just one factor in alleviating the burden of public utility vehicle drivers.
Tulungan sila makabangon muli. Marami sa kanila ay hindi pa naibabalik yung mga rota nila pre-pandemic na naghihirap pa din hanggang ngayon. Marami sa kanila ang may hinaing tungkol sa modernization na nagaganap. So sa akin, ang daming pwedeng gawin yung pamahalaan para matulungan yung mga drivers natin makaahon sa pinagdadaanan nilang kahirapan ngayon. Yung presyo ng gasolina, isa lang yun.
Robredo and Pangilinan also met with local officials, including Laguna Governor Ramil Hernandez and Laguna 3rd District Representative Sol Aragones. Aragones is running for governor, challenging Hernandez, who is seeking re-election. The Leni Kiko tandem will be going to Bataan and Zambales this weekend. Harleen Delgado, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Philippine National Police and the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency arrested 2 suspected drug peddlers and seized 9.6 million worth of marijuana. Joint elements of Bulacan Provincial Intelligence Unit, Drug Enforcement Group, San Miguel Municipal Police Station, and PIDEA Bulacan conducted a buy-bust operation in Paliwasan, San Miguel, Bulacan. The operatives arrested Dexter Asban and Jomeron Macusi. PNP Chief Police General Leonardo Carlos said the PNP is now tracing the network of drug supplies of the 2 arrested suspects. Carlos adds appropriate charges for violation of Section 5 and Section 11 of Republic Act 9165 will be filed against the suspects.
Boracay Island now offers booster shots for foreigners who are having their vacation on the island. Lalaine Moreno reports.
Foreign tourists may now get their booster shot in Boracay Island while having their vacation. The Department of Tourism offers free booster shot to those who are visiting the island to encourage everyone to get vaccinated. Tourism Secretary Bernadette Rumulupuyat said, aside from fully vaccinated foreigners, local tourists may also avail the booster shot. They can walk in and get the booster vaccine in pharmacies participating in the national government's vaccination efforts. Puyat also said this will provide an extra layer of protection for the guests while on vacation.
Ang maganda kasi sa Boracay, as you see, una siya nag 100% vaccinated. Yung tourism workers, walang vaccination hesitancy. Yun yung wala kaming kinonvince para mapabakuna. Mga 30% na na-booster sa tourism workers, and we also opened yung vaccination sa Watsons. So even the tourists, foreign or domestic, pwedeng pumunta doon para magpa-booster libre.
The current vaccination rate in the island is 106% fully vaccinated and 30% booster shot for the tourism workers. Meanwhile, the DOT said aside from easing restrictions and removing quarantine status, the high vaccination rate of the tourist destination encouraged international tourists to visit the country.
Ang sinasabi ng mga foreigners kahapon, yung gusto daw nila is that napaka-madali raw mag-travel dito and they feel safe because they found out about the vaccination rate at nagbo-booster na tayo.
Laline Moreno, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Philippine Statistics Authority plans to open the registration process for the National Identification System for Filipinos abroad. Janice Inhente will tell us why.
The Philippine Statistics Authority is now coordinating with the Department of Foreign Affairs on the plan to roll out the national ID registration for overseas Filipino workers. In an interview from the program Get It Straight with Daniel Razon, head of the Philippine Identification System Communication Team, said they are now discussing on how to implement the PhilSys project to Filipinos abroad by this year.
Magkakaroon po kami ng initial talks with them to plan out po paano yung magiging registration ng ating mga OFW. Siguro po pilot po for this year, but definitely po nasa plans po ng PSA this year to coordinate with DFA for this initiative.
PSA also plans to use the Philippine embassies and consulates as a registration center.
Definitely po pag na-roll out na po yung overseas registration, ang magiging registration centers po natin is yung mga embassies and consulates po natin. And at the same time po, baka magkaroon din po ng mga road shows if ever for our overseas Filipinos.
In line to this, PSA calls on OFWs who are now on holiday vacation in the Philippines to take the opportunity to register for the national ID. Out of the 90 million total population targeted by PSA, over 55 million Filipinos have submitted applications for national ID. Apart from the on-site registration in central, regional, and satellite offices, PSA is also open for institutional registration, where their team will personally visit the company offices to conduct a national ID registration.
We continue to do this. So if meron po tayong mga companies na gustong mag-request or kahit government agencies para po magkaroon ng institutional registration sa location po nila, this can be done naman po. So kailangan lang po i-request.
For companies who wish to avail or request institutional registration, just contact the nearest PSA office in your area. While in Metro Manila, you can send a request on the official email of the PSA Central Office. Janice Inhente, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
And for the news abroad, tension remains between Ukraine and Russia as the crisis reaches the most dangerous moment for Europe, according to UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Joselito Liquido will tell us why live. Joselito?
Good evening, Kath. With 130,000 Russian troops built up at the Ukraine border, the threat to the European security is at large, with UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson labeling it as the biggest security crisis that Europe has faced in decades. The decisions of the Russian President Vladimir Putin remain unpredictable and his plans with Ukraine uncertain, and so Prime Minister Boris believes tougher sanctions will be needed to deter an irrational response.
We've got to get it right, and I think that the combination of sanctions and military resolve plus diplomacy are what is in order. And the tougher those sanctions are, the more automatic they are, the more chance we have of deterring what I think would be an irrational response.
Meanwhile, Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, clarified that NATO was not a threat to Russia, but is preparing for worse while waiting for the political solution.
NATO is not a threat to Russia, but we must be prepared for the worst, while remaining strongly committed to finding a political solution.
Secretary General Stoltenberg had also delivered a letter to Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, inviting him to talks of improving the European security, also warning Russia of the consequences of attacking Ukraine. However, the Russian foreign minister has since then declined, rejecting the concerns regarding the buildup of Russian troops, further claiming as propaganda against Russia. Kath?
Yes, Joselito, is there any known requests made by Russia with the current standoff?
Kath, Russia has continued to repeat that they have no goal of invading Ukraine. However, they want Ukraine and the rest of the former Soviet countries out of the NATO alliance. Kath, they also do not want NATO providing weapons to Ukraine. However, the United States and NATO have denied Russia's request. Back to you, Kath.
Thank you, Joselito Liquido, for that live report. Due to the growing number of COVID-19 cases in South Korea, caused by the fast-spreading Omicron variant, the country's government has informed its citizens from low-risk groups with mild symptoms to do self-treatments at home in order to free up medical resources for more serious cases. High-risk groups consist of those 60 years old and above with underlying medical conditions. Previously, the government has been providing medical kits, including an oxygen saturation measurement device, thermometer, and fever remedy to infected patients, but due to limited resources, these will now only be available to priority groups. South Korea has had huge success in mitigating its COVID-19 cases due to its consistent testing, tracing, social distancing, and mask-wearing efforts. The United States Congress gave its final approval to a sexual harassment bill, a milestone in the Me Too movement. Nerissa Dando will tell us why live. Yes, Nerissa?
Good evening, Kath. A legislation which will eliminate employment contracts from forcing people to settle sexual harassment or assault through arbitration has been approved by the U.S. Congress on Thursday. The bill is considered a milestone for the #MeToo movement, as this will assure that people who experience such assaults can now appeal in the courts and take legal actions. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who initiated and introduced the bill in 2017, said that it is a significant workplace reforms in the history. Moreover, according to Senator Gillibrand, harassment survivors will no longer be legally forbidden to sue their employers. Meanwhile, the sexual harassment bill is retroactive. It will nullify arbitration language in contracts, so people can now take new legal action.
Thank you, Nerissa Dando, for that live report. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security announced it has been working with Ghost Robotics to develop a robot dog for the U.S.-Mexico border. Jane Robles reports why live. Jane?
Good evening, Kath. Both Democrats and Republicans have long agreed that the U.S. Customs and Border Protection needs more technology to monitor the 2,000-mile terrain of the U.S.-Mexico border. U.S. authorities have been working with a Philadelphia-based company, Ghost Robotics, for 2.5 years to develop robot patrol dogs that have special sensors and can carry equipment to identify the drugs, nuclear materials, and chemical weapons. These robot dogs can also explore confined spaces and have long-range and night vision cameras, according to the CEO of Ghost Robotics. The effectivity of robot dogs to patrol the border is still under review by Senator Mark Kelly. Some Democrats, however, oppose the use of it, as the U.S.-Mexico border is already overly militarized. It has also gained criticisms from Border Network for Human Rights, stating that the government has invested a lot of money in military technology without considering changing the immigration policy that would fix the broken systems. Kath?
Thank you, Jane Robles, for that live report. And those are the reasons behind the news in other parts of the globe. I'm Kat Tumaraos, live from Bangkok, Thailand. Good evening.
Meanwhile, presidential candidate Manila City Mayor Francisco Isko Moreno Dumagoso says some may be encouraged to avoid paying taxes. This is due to the Commission on Elections ruling on the disqualification case filed against Bongbong Marcos. Asher Kadapan Jr. tells us why live. Yes, Asher, good evening. Go ahead.
Good evening, Will. The dismissal of the disqualification case filed against Bongbong Marcos in the Commission on Elections may lead to instability. But Manila City Mayor Francisco Isko Dumagoso hopes this will not happen in the case of BBM. The 47-year-old presidential candidate further says this may lead to others committing tax avoidance, which will greatly affect the country.
I hope hindi siya mag-create ng instability sa ating buhay bilang bansa. Kasi tama rin ang opinion mo na baka magkaroon ng masamang epekto ito sa iba nating mga kababayan na ganun nga ang gawin nila. Kasi baka gayahin. Ito yung hindi magandang gayahin.
Meanwhile, the Comelec stands by its earlier campaign guidelines prohibiting candidates to take selfie photos with their supporters. Comelec spokesperson Director James Jimenez says if the candidates would insist, the latter may formally request from the commission so they may decide on the matter. Mayor Dumagoso, however, says they will send a letter of request to Comelec if it is really necessary.
Sumulat na lang sila sa amin para maaktuhan officially, no? That would be the best way to do that.
Gusto ko makamayan ng tao. Gusto ko mayakap sila. Gusto ko maramdaman nila ako. Gusto ko malapit ako sa kanila. It's always like that. And I hope whatever rules that they're doing right now, tingnan naman nila yung ibang konsiderasyon na mas gusto ng tao na nakikita nila, nakakasalamuhan nila yung kanilang kandidato.
Well, today the Action Democratico Party visited the cities of Navotas and Malabon, while they are scheduled to conduct a grand motorcade campaign in Quezon City starting at 8 in the morning tomorrow. Will.
Yes, thank you very much. Asher Cadapan Jr. reporting live from Quezon City.
A Ghanaian woman who lost the child she was carrying experienced poverty together with her mother. Her wish is to have a livelihood of her own in order to pay her mom's debts and so they can make ends meet. And this wish has come true with God's help and mercy. Here's the story of how Ruth in Ghana, Africa, witnessed that MCGI cares.
Amen kwana no ho bema bi na odada me ena minyi sin nti na me ko school ena minyi sin nti ma me na papa nda afa me ko dada ntu.
With such a painful experience, left with only a child in her womb, Rita had no choice but to leave her parents and her home in Tubafulani, Ghana, Africa.
Ko dada ntu dan tumechi no na comedy me ntinya imagine say menina baby amenina mpopi na menni ho no na I say na the word na ye na famity nti mama bi no hu me no bi same ha na me kai chere no di me befi be pa me mama.
Rita was able to return to her parents' loving arms, but something tragic happened to Rita.
Choba mami ni minti osajiri di mission ni seneba. Ama mami ta mama kuske woni chin the medical hospital nade. And I'm say ama kuske nti when to manyeni na nkwewi.
That miscarriage was coupled with poverty. They could eat only when Rita's mom had money. Otherwise, they would sleep with an empty stomach. But a good opportunity came next.
I'm not doubtful. And no introducing MCGI. Eti se me kamere sise. Menye dwuma bi aye. Nanka me de ehuske ni be cheche kana ma metiti.
To ease Rita's worries, Members Church of God International granted her wish, baking equipment and ingredients so she could start her own pastry business. Akpenamao, thanks be to God for His love and kindness He bestows upon us. Beloved, if God so loved us, we ought also to love one another. Let us love one another and continue doing good. God's goodness and love will be heralded by MCGI in every nation where there are people who fear and love Him. That His holy name be praised, because MCGI cares.
And before we close, we will leave you with a word giving glory to God from the book of Proverbs, chapter 6, verse 23. It says, "For the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light, and reproofs of instruction are the way of life."
And those are the reasons behind the news, February 11, 2022. Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I'm Angelo Castro III.
And because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
So I think safeguards should still be there. Kung magkakaroon man tayo ng pagtransisyon and easing of restrictions, I think the mask mandate will be the last to go because it will protect each and every one of us kung sakasakali, and also not just for COVID-19 but for the other respiratory infections also. It has protected us.
Para klaro lang po, wala ho kaming paglilinlang, wala ho pa kaming pagkakamali. Ang nakakalungkot lang ay baka yung mga commissioner, iba lang po yung kanilang pananaw.
The basic decision is that there simply wasn't any ruling in the CA that said that kailangan ma-disqualify itong na pinapatawan ng perpetual disqualification yung kandidato. And that's really all that we have to go on, the existing CA ruling, right? The Comelec does not have the power to overturn or to modify that CA ruling.
So magkakaroon po kami ng initial talks with them to plan out po paano yung magiging registration ng ating mga OFW. Siguro po pilot po for this year, but definitely po nasa plans po ng PSA this year to coordinate with DFA for this initiative.